so it has to
So y'all have been here a while,
Well, my wife is native here,
right?
and like I say, I came here after World War II,
Uh-huh.
and I was in the Marine Corps during
be.
part of the war,
This
Right.
lamp.
and
We've got
Just move
so
it out a little bit.
blind,
That's fine. That way I can see.
so
That'll be
blind we can't see unless we have every light in the house.
good.
anyway, after the war ended and we got back in the States, well, they
Yeah.
mustered me out in January. Well, it wasn't time to get into A&M. I couldn't get in at that time. And I lived in Beaumont, so I went
Right.
back down there and went to Lamar Junior College
Uh-huh.
through the spring and the summer semesters, and came to A&M in the fall of that year.
Uh-huh.
And
After, excuse me, but
Yeah.
after we did this,
Uh-huh.
I told Bill Youngkin I
Uh-huh.
know him.
Right, sure.
And I said, I can't find any pictures of Dan.
Uh-huh.
Well, about a year or so ago, I ran across all these pictures.
Oh my goodness.
His mother was not a keeper. She
I see.
threw everything away, but
I
I
see.
ended up with some of that.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
but anyway, I graduated out here in '49,
Uh-huh.
and then I stayed on another year and got a master's degree.
Right.
And then all that time I was working for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They had moved an office from Waco down here to college, and they walked in the class one day and they wanted to know if any students wanted to work. So I stick my hand up, and I worked for these people. And when I graduated, I didn't quite have enough GI time to finish out the master's degree, and they took me under their wing and helped me get through that crisis
Right.
up there.
Right.
And then in '51 I left here. Is that what you want to know now?
Yeah, no, I want to
Okay,
know. I want to know. Then
I went to work.
we'll go
I
back
went to
a little
work
bit.
as an entomologist for a Mexican cotton company in Mexico.
I see.
And actually worked for these people about 10 years down
Uh-huh.
there. And we lived in Brownsville at one time.
Right.
We moved to the valley after I went down there. And then when Eisenhower became president, all my USDA guys here went to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So they had some more money to spend, and they opened a pink bowworm research lab in Brownsville.
Mm-hmm.
So they hired me back down there to work in this lab because they had groomed me to be an insect physiologist. They couldn't find one to buy or hire.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what they pushed my education to be. And so when they opened this lab down there, I was a natural to go back to work for them. But I never did quit working in Mexico. I worked weekends, and the people I worked for had an airplane, and if they was in a bind in the middle of the week, I'd go after work. They'd pick me up and take me down to wherever we were going to need to have to go.
I see.
So it was a real good experience. Anyway, then I got restless and wanted to come back and go back to college again to
Mhm.
get a PhD in plant biochemistry. And they wouldn't transfer me back up here, so I told Ada Ruth, I said, well, we'll go up to there, and if we can find enough work, well, I think I'm going to go back to school. So we came back up here, probably in about 55, I suppose. But I'm still working in Mexico. I used to drive from here to the border every week
Mm-hmm.
and work 4 days a week there and come back up here,
I'll be
go
darned.
to school, and ran a cotton gin in the off season.
Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't make the PhD,
Uh-huh.
and finally we decided, well, we just go work,
Right.
you know. So that's basically what we did.
Yeah.
And
Is that when you opened a nursery?
No, we didn't open that after we retired.
Oh, I see. I see.
First time.
I see. Yeah.
Okay.
How
Yeah.
did you know we had a nurse?
Oh, it was in here. Yeah.
Well, no, that was much later on.
I see.
But anyway, we moved back up here. The kids were getting old enough to go to school, and we thought the school system was better up here to begin with.
Right.
And I still commuted back and forth to the valley and
Yeah.
into Mexico.
Right.
And finally, it got to the point that one end or the other had to quit. And the people I was working for, you couldn't have found nicer people over there. And they begged me to stay. They offered me a farm. They wanted all kind of stuff to keep me down there. And I said, no, I gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
So we came back up here, and we've been here ever since.
Yes, sir. Well, take me back to when you started in the military. You had to jump through a few hoops to get into the Marines, didn't you?
Yeah.
Tell me.
I had to show you this.
Okay.
I turned 18 in December 3rd. So this December 3rd here coming up. She has a birthday next week. She'll be 80 and I'll be 84 in December the 3rd.
You're not supposed to tell a woman's age.
Anyway, all the time when I turned 18, I was talking to the people down there in Beaumont about joining the Marine Corps.
Right.
Well,
That's not what you're looking for.
yes, it is. When it got down to the deal, I had to go have some surgery done.
Right.
And so that took me into the spring of the next year. And in the interim, while I was doing all of that, I had some impacted wisdom teeth. And my mother says, well, you might as well get those out while you're doing the other. So I got my wisdom teeth removed and had that testicle removed. And did you graduate from A&M?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No.
Well, everybody, I shouldn't say that in front of my wife, but if it was something they wanted bad enough that they would give their left testicle, that was.
Is that the letter?
That's the letter from the doctor.
That's the letter from the doctor.
Verifying
I
that he
didn't
took
know
out
that
the
was
testicle.
in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So I had to. The only way I could get in when I got
mention that.
well enough to go, the only way I could get in was I had to be drafted. And that was a fiasco. And fortunately, I had this letter. I took it with me. And so they drafted me, and I think we went to San Antonio to be
Let me
moved
see,
over.
I don't think I've ever.
And when we got there, we got in this thing and took physicals and everything, and they gave me a choice of being in the Army or the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, shit, I didn't come here to be in the Navy. I came here to be in the Marine Corps. Well, they were closed. They said, you can't get in the Marine Corps. So I give them this letter,
Right.
and there was an old master sergeant, Marine standing around in there that had part of the thing. And so they go off and they to another room and debate a little while, and then they came back and said, okay, you're going to go in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
So they put me and 4 other guys on a train to go to San Diego.
Yes, sir.
To be in the Marines.
Right.
And that was how I ended up getting over there. And if I had never had that letter, I'd probably never gotten in the Marine Corps.
Right.
They read that and then they said, well, he's really serious about wanting to get in.
Yeah, he'd give his left one for it. That's funny.
So that was
So this was
I got over there.
1943, I guess, when you went
Yeah,
over?
yeah.
When you went to San Diego.
Yeah.
Right. So you went there for basic?
Yes. And then while we were there, they screened us for different things.
Right.
My ambition, I'll tell you, before I ever joined the Marine was to be a tail gunner in an SBD Dauntless, which I'm very glad I didn't ever get.
Uh-huh.
And I had a friend of mine that went to another high school, lived in the same block, and we grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to join the Marines, and then there was 2 guys in my school where I was going to school that wanted to join the Marine Corps. Well, there was actually 4 of us that went in pretty much around the same time. One of them, well, the two that I went to school with, one of them survived Guadalcanal, but they were both killed on Ewo within a couple of days of each other.
Yes, sir.
The other guy just retired as a doctor in Austin, and he did get to be a tail gunner in a SPD Dauntless. And we laughed because he shot his own tail off one time being a gunner on the thing, and then they ended up in SB2Cs, which was a little more sophisticated than the old SPD.
Right.
But I finished. They sent me to Jacksonville. Okay, I went through radar and radio school down there, and you have to remember
Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah,
okay.
And you have to remember that in those days, if you were going to transmit anything over distance, you still had to do it with Morse code. There wasn't any voice distance stuff. They had a little high-towered stuff where you could talk to the tower as you were landing and taking off. But the true deal, if you had to communicate with anyone over distance, it had to be with a radio operator. And so that was what I trained for. That's what they took me from there. They sent me to Cherry Point, North Carolina. And then they assigned me to a air squadron up there of PBJs, which is the old B-25. That's what this thing is that we flew in.
Right.
And it was 614 was the VMB number for it. This is 443. That's where I ended up overseas. But we trained there. We went down to Boca Chica and the tail end of Florida Keys down there, and they had an airstrip down there, and we trained a good bit of stuff that were. We had a different thing about the B-25 than what the Army had. They gave us old planes, stuff that they had, and some of them were pretty antiquated. And then they stuck a 75 millimeter cannon in one bunch of them in there. And the first thing the Marines did was pull all that mess out of there and threw it away. Rockets weren't perfected up to that point, but they thought that you couldn't hit anything with that 75. So we finally modified the planes to where we could. Well, that's getting ahead of my story. We just trained. I was a waist gunner. We had 50 caliber machine guns. The old original B-25 had a turret that would go down under the plane, and it fired twin. What's the 30 caliber? So the Marines took all that mess out and cut the holes in the side. They just had some planes out here not too long ago.
Exactly. I was there.
My kids took me out. My grandkids took me out.
I was there. Right.
Okay. And it was pretty much like the one that we had.
Right.
And we had very crude radar. Radar in the days when I was in radio school was an oscilloscope with a line down the front. And that line represented you in distance, in miles. And if you had a thing that you could pick up, it'd make a blip, a little momentary blip, either to the right or left of that line. And all that told you was that whatever you were picking up was in front of you, because it only scanned about 140 degrees. It didn't go round and round. And then as you approach it, and it could move closer to you to where you would actually be able to visibly see it. Well, that was a poor excuse for radar, really, in those days. And overseas, though, they finally got to where we still had the 140 degree scanning, but we had a scanner out near the end of the wing, and it would give you an outline of the islands. That's basically, you could kind of identify them if you were up high enough. And it really wasn't very perfected to do much of anything at that time, islands and all the things, but you couldn't identify anything. If it had a big harbor or a big port, something like that, you could see where it should be, but you didn't define anything. So we didn't use the radar for much of anything. They finally developed rockets, and when we were in training in Florida, they had a 2,000-pound rocket that had external deals on a B-25 that you could carry it, and you fired it with a static line that was hooked to the plane, because if you fired it up next to the plane, it'd burn you and everything else with it. So it had to go at the end of that static line to be able to fire it. Okay, then we did also a lot of submarine work where we had depth charges. We could carry 3 of those, and we tried dropping that stuff. And then overseas we did use some of that. We didn't ever use the big rocket. We did use the depth charges because we liked dumping them into the bivouac areas as good as anything, because when they had a thing, a fuse on it called a daisy cutter that made it go off above the ground. And in that war that they were in Iraq, they're still using something that they call daisy cutter.
Right.
I'm sure it's basically the same thing, but it was an extended part on the front of the bomb to make it explode before it got all the way to the ground. And then if it was a fragmenting bomb, it's made to anti-personnel, where it just split it up into a bunch of pieces. And we dropped those babies in there, and it kind of created a real show of.
What kind of altitude were you when you dropped?
Here's my flight log. Every bit of it. I did 38 missions, and we basically at medium altitude, the highest we could go was between 12 and about 10 to 12,000 feet. And that was where we did the medium bombing. We did a lot of low-level bombing where you came in off the water and raised up high enough to get over the trees, and strafing and bombing with delayed fuse bombs, so that if you were using anti-personnel bombs, you'd drop them, and you'd think they're going to blow you out of the air because they'd hit right underneath you and bounce and start coming up underneath you. But it had about 11-second fuse, so you got far enough ahead of it that you didn't have any bit difficulty.
Exactly.
And then, well, the guy that did this article in the paper, he had done one about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of mine. And I was reading it, and it was talking about the fighter pilots in the Marine Corps being moved from the South Pacific up to Okinawa during that invasion. So I told him, I said, it had to have been the same bunch that we moved, because the Corsairs that they had could not navigate over any distance with water. So we took these people from the South Pacific, picked them up in, I don't remember where we picked them up, somewhere down in there, went up through the Philippines and up through Clarkfield, and we had 2 fighter planes under each wing, and they just flew wing on us. We did the navigating and everything. And when we landed at Clarkfield, they were still fighting within about 2 miles of the airstrip out there. On the ground was. So anyway, we anchored there and ferried from there to Okinawa, to Katrina Air Base or Yontan. It'll be in there, whatever it was called, the name of the air base. And it was real strange when we landed. There was 2 old Marines standing over there pitching horseshoes, and the sirens were going off everywhere. And I said, "You're not worried about anything over here?" And he said, "They're not messing with us. They're trying to hit all those ships that are out in the harbor." Well, I was telling my friend, the retired Army guy that was up here the other day, that from the air, as far as you could see when you got close to Okinawa, were ships.
Right.
In any direction. I never saw such an armada of ships in my life. Not all military ships, but there were tankers, there were merchant marine ships, and everything else out there. And when we were looking down, coming in over the edge of that thing, we could see the battle wagons firing on the shore.
Mm-hmm.
And hoping that they weren't trying to shoot at us, because I mean they were pouring the stuff onto that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, had the little airstrip when we landed on it. The Seabees were already on it, trying to extend it for the big airplanes to come down there and land.
Mm-hmm.
And so the bulk of the fighting really was these people, kamikazes and everybody else, coming down offshore trying to hit these ships out there. There wasn't as much that they could destroy on land.
Right.
So they were trying to make their mark. It was a desperate part of the war by that time, when
Yes.
the Japanese were trying to stay afloat.
Right.
And coming back after we had delivered these planes, we got into a typhoon north of Luzon.
Mm-hmm.
And on the aircraft, I guess you're familiar with them if you've had any playing with them.
Right.
They had a little transponder called IFF gear that identified you from the natives.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were at the front line where the real action was, it had a code on that thing, and it had about 4 or 5 different switches on it, and you could change that code. And the closer you got to the front line with it, it changed by the hour.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to remember to turn it and be on the right frequency so they didn't shoot your ass out of the air.
Mm-hmm.
Well, during this typhoon, we tried going under it, and we got bounced around pretty good. And it had a detonator in it, so that if you crashed, it was supposed to explode inside that thing to keep the Japanese from owning one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, ours blew up before we ever got back to Luzon. And we could hear the anti-aircraft people and the fighter pilots and the Army talking about they had an unidentified bogey that they couldn't put their hand on. And they were giving them some vectors where they could pick it up, which was us. And all of a sudden, when we got out of that storm, here was 2 P-51s riding wing on us, going back to Luzon.
Mm-hmm.
And we had no way of identifying ourselves, so that's why they'd fly close, and we waved back and forth, and they decided we weren't going to bomb them or something. But it was kind of neat. And we ended up in Mindanao, in a place called Malabang. That was in the southern part of the Philippines.
Okay.
And when the war ended, that's where we were. And we weren't doing any more bombing. We were through with most of that. And where we landed down there and had a strip, it was a mat strip, which we never had to be on before, but that's where we operated out of. And we had a river that came out of the mountainous area going down to the little town of Malabang. And we were outside of the little community there where we had the airstrips. And we had more trouble there with the Moros than we did with the Japanese. And to this day, they still are in that southern part of Mindanao, but they've gotten out of there. They got over to Zamboanga, and I notice in the news I keep up with, that they actually have spread pretty much around all through in the Philippines.
Right.
And this is the Muslim population that
Yes.
we were having trouble with 60 years ago, or however many years back that was.
Right.
And they were crazy. I mean, they'd sit over there. The only thing that they were interested in getting from us were provisions and maybe guns and whatever. And they'd try and come across that river. But when you went down to take a bath in the river, or that's where we bathed, it was kind of like the rapids, the rivers up in Colorado, really fast, clear water, beautiful, beautiful place. And when you went down, you had to have an armed guy sitting on the side while you're taking a bath on your side.
Wow.
Because they'd pot shoot you from the other side of the river out there.
Man.
But that's where we washed our clothes and took our bath and everything.
Yeah.
Got our drinking water was offset from that river. But very interesting.
Now you had one mission that that you had your tail shot off.
Not me. No, the guy in no, the plane that we were in had a cam that you couldn't get beyond when you were the 50 caliber was free running. You could move it back and forth, but you couldn't move it far enough to shoot your own engine or your tail.
Right.
You could shoot within a distance.
Right. But you had a mission where I guess your engine was shot off. Is that
Yeah,
right? Your
yeah,
engine was
yeah,
shot. And you
yeah,
had fuel
okay.
pouring in.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I was referring
Okay.
to. Yeah, not your
That
tail.
was
You had your
when
engine.
we just finished our bombing run while we were dropping bombs.
Right.
And that's not in that article, is it?
Yeah. So on one.
Well,
yeah.
we were particularly in the back of the plane, ready to leave because the gasoline was pouring in back there. And the pilot says, well, if we haven't blown up by now, we're probably all right. So they feathered that engine, and we dropped out of the formation, but we'd already dumped our bombs. And they had a PBY that went with you on all your missions. And they were a rescue bunch from the Navy. They'd orbit off distance from the target area. And if anybody got shot down and went down in the water somewhere, they could sweep down in there and land and pick you up. So we were ready to get out and go there, and he said, no, if it didn't blow up, we were going to try and make it back. So they put another plane with us to ride along with us to be sure we made it back to the island. And the island of Emaru was a little thing. It was on the 150th meridian, and it was about 3 degrees below the equator. Wasn't a very big island, but the coral had come up out of the ocean about 200 feet, made a plateau, and that was where our airstrip was.
I see.
On top of that flat land.
Yeah.
And if you landed short, you hit the side of the mountain.
Yeah.
But we practiced single engine flying all the time, so it wasn't anything
Right.
that fancy, really. We landed, we were all right with it. They held everybody up till we got on the ground, but that didn't do anything. And had almost a good experience. We went over to Los Negros and picked up a civilian guy that was a radar specialist, and we brought him back to the island. And it was the first time he'd ever been up in the air, and when we landed, we had a big tire blew out on this thing. So when it did, it went down on that one side and tore up the engine on one side, and it made a big swirl and ran into a revetment. And a guy got out of there, and he was shaking like a leaf. He said, that's my first and last air ride. I said, well, if you're going to get off this island, the only way you're going to get off, you're going to have to fly again. But it didn't scare you. You never really felt scared about any of that kind of stuff, because when it happened so quick you didn't have time to mess with anything else anyway.
Right.
You just rode it out till it stopped.
Right.
But yeah, that we flew and landed, and we didn't even tear that plane up. They fixed it up, and we were still running. But it was a very neat old airplane, really. It was the loudest damn thing in the world. Have you ever flown in one or been in one?
No, I've been, when they came out here to Easterwood, I climbed in one, but I haven't
they
ever
weren't
flown.
revving it up though.
No, no, but I've heard
It was
about
the
it.
noisiest damn thing in the world. And your ears would ring when you get out of there. Most of the flights, if you looked in that log, were about 3 hours. That was max flying
Right.
pretty well without
Right.
extra fuel.
Right.
And this same squadron, I wasn't with them at the time, but they had gone to Truck
Mm-hmm.
to bomb up there, and that was way, way out of line for this group to be up there. They barely had enough fuel to go up there and drop the bombs and come back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they got up there and they started engaging the damn Japanese, and some of them got winged and couldn't get back. Some of them ran out of fuel. Some of them got shot down. We lost a lot of people up at that one fight up there.
Right.
But it wouldn't be in this book because
Yeah.
it all happened actually before I was there anyway.
Right.
So they never went back up there. We did mostly New Britain and New Ireland.
I see. I see.
And I couldn't find anything exciting to tell you that would
Well, no, I
writing
mean,
about.
no, just the mission. The B-25 was there wasn't a lot of room inside there, was
No,
there?
there wasn't any room.
Yeah.
No, there wasn't any room. But
Yeah.
I tell you, we had another squadron of, we had 3 squadrons on the island I was on. And then there was one that operated off of Saipan.
Mm-hmm.
And they flew only at night, and they only flew about 50 feet off the water. And this IFF gear, if you were a submarine, when you surfaced at night to recharge,
Mm-hmm.
you had to have that IFF gear running and on the right frequency.
Right.
And these guys would go along, and anything that couldn't get identified, they tried to sink it. And they almost sank an American sub out there one time because they didn't have the thing turned on. And I don't know how they managed to get away from it, but that was all they did. They didn't fly in the daytime. They just flew right on the water.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been, I think, more exciting than where we did. I don't know. It was all.
So you were there. You were over there flying when they dropped the bomb, right? In
Yeah.
in
Well,
45.
we were already moved up to the
Mm-hmm.
Philippines by
Right.
that time.
Yeah, but you were in the Pacific at that time.
Yeah. No, we were in the
Yeah.
Pacific before
Right.
that, but we were.
Yeah.
We had moved after we'd been to Okinawa. We moved up to the Philippines.
Right. Right.
Mindanao. I'll get it in a minute.
What do you recall about that time? I mean, were you like everybody else? Were you preparing to?
Well, when
To-
they
to
dropped
support a ground
when
war,
they
or-
dropped the bomb, nobody believed it.
Right.
That was the biggest thing. You know, they were talking about dropping it and cleaning out a whole city.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a 2,000-pound bomb was as big as they made,
Mm-hmm.
and we dropped those, and they'd go down there, and you make some nice concentric rings, but they would be a long way from trying to destroy a whole city.
Right.
So everybody thought they were all just bullshit, and you know,
Uh-huh.
you got all kind of crappy stuff like that.
Right.
And then after they finally dropped the second one, well, then everybody got serious about maybe they really did do something big with it.
Right.
But it didn't change much of anything for us, except that it shortened the war in a hurry.
Sure. Sure.
And I think we probably would have invaded Japan anyway if they hadn't have been able to convince them to stop,
Right.
because those people were fanatics.
Oh yeah.
They didn't.
They were fight to the death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And while we were sitting there after the war, it took us a month, I think, to get home on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
But they were trying to get us to go to China. They were trying to get a group together to go to Tientsin, China, and as an occupation group. And I said, no, shit, I'm ready to go home. I didn't care about going over there. But that's where it ended up. There was a bunch of them that went, but in our deal, I think pretty near everybody came back home.
Right. Right. So you came back home when? In
December.
December of 45.
Yeah.
Right.
And they dumped us out in January.
Uh-huh. On the
And-
West Coast?
Huh?
On the West Coast somewhere?
Yeah. Gave me mustering out money, and I flew most of the war with a guy. we weren't in the same squadron, but we trained together in Cherry Point.
Mm-hmm.
And he was from Boulder, Colorado. So when we got mustered out, they gave us a little pay to go out, you know, mustering out pay. And he'd gone home during Christmas and brought his car back. So he said, "Why don't you come go with me to Colorado?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd been up there. I had a brother-in-law that was at Fort Logan, I think it was, up there. And I'd been up there, but I didn't really see much of Colorado. So he said, "Oh, you got to come on with me up there." So I rode home with this guy and spent about 3 or 4 days of good drinking and partying up there.
Uh-huh.
It snowed like hell.
In Boulder?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, it snowed all over the place.
Right,
up
yeah,
there.
yeah, but
This
that's where you were.
This was in
Boulder.
January.
Uh-huh.
And his dad was an old retired fella, and he had a Model A Ford sitting up on blocks
Uh-huh.
in a garage. And I said, "Damn, I'd like to have that car." So it didn't have any rubber on it. We had to go to Denver and find some retreads to go on it. But it cranked and it started. And I left Denver, or Boulder, in a snowstorm, going back down to Raton Pass, coming down. I was going to Dallas because I had a sister that lived in Dallas. And that old Model A chugged along, and it had not a canvas top, it had a thing with chicken wire, and it looked like, I'm trying to describe what the material was like. Anyway, it had kind of dry rotted, and it rolled up on the end so that the snow was coming in there and no heat. But I had a marine blanket and a big marine overcoat, and that's how I drove there. And in 2 days, I got to Dallas. It really,
Took you 2 days?
yeah, but that was pretty
Yeah.
fast moving.
Yeah, I would say. How fast would it go?
It goes 40 miles an hour.
Uh-huh.
And I kept it till I came to school at A&M, and I sold it. And why, I don't know. I would give anything to have had it because it didn't have a rust spot on it.
Oh,
Yeah.
she's just
And it was really a neat car.
That's it.
Oh, I just got a picture of this of you driving all bundled up in the winter,
Oh, well,
40 miles an hour from Boulder to Dallas.
But you'd have to know what Raton Pass is over there.
Oh, well,
Have
yeah.
you ever
I mean,
been up and down?
Well, no, I haven't, but I know people that have, and
It's
that's
pretty,
not an easy drive.
pretty risky. And
Yeah.
that old Model A would pass people on that thing that they couldn't get up there because it didn't have traction enough to
Right?
make the thing stay on the road.
Right.
And it was a long way down when
Did you
picked up
Did
side
you-
of that thing.
Did you slide around very much?
No,
or-
no,
you
it just drove
just-
it real slow, and it kept positive, driving on it. I didn't really have any. Once you got past that place, it was all right.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything bad about it.
I'm surprised you made it in 2 days. That's pretty quick,
Well,
especially because you couldn't go 40 miles an hour around the Raton Pass. though.
You might have taken you 2 weeks.
no. No, it took me 2 days to get to Dallas. I
Yeah,
got to
yeah.
Beaumont.
Yeah, but
And
still,
then after I stayed there for a few days, I went to Beaumont.
yeah.
And
Where'd you spend the night? Do you remember?
I had a sister that lived in Dallas up there.
No, I mean between Boulder and Dallas, or did you just drive through all the way?
When I left, no, I stayed in a filling station.
Oh,
up there.
okay.
I wasn't gonna go down that thing in the dark.
Where was that? Some place in New Mexico, or?
No, it's on the border there. This Raton Pass.
Oh, okay.
I had been there as a tourist one time.
I see.
Before the war,
Yeah.
and
That might have
before
been
I'd
the
ever
most.
been in the
That might have been the most dangerous thing you did in the war. Right
I
there.
think it was. I couldn't visualize anything.
No, you need to see a picture of him holding these huge snakes out there. In
Yeah, I
the
collected snakes. That was only a hobby I had out there.
Yeah.
That wasn't on anything I did. But I had no way of identifying the snakes.
Right.
And when we landed and got all the stuff off the ship, the airplane flew over there. I had to flip with the guys, and me and one other guy had to take the armament that was on the
Excuse me,
plane.
could I fix you something to drink?
No,
Y'all
thank you.
stay
No,
We,
I'm fine.
we took the armament, all that heavy stuff out of the plane,
Uh-huh.
and the plane had a belly tank that was going to fly to the Honolulu area.
Right.
And so we matched, and this other guy and I had to go on ship. So they put us on a CVE. You know what that is?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, the USS Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
And there was about 7 or 8 or maybe 10 of us on there. And the rest of them were all Swabbies.
Mm-hmm.
So when we crossed the date line, we got initiated pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And they had you smart because we had skivvy drawers that were all dyed olive green or something. They weren't white.
Mm-hmm.
And the Navy all still had white ones.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't have to ask who you belong to when they
Right.
run you through one of
I
those.
think I would have borrowed somebody.
Yeah.
And I still have my certificate that they gave us
Right.
when we crossed the date line out there.
I'll be darned. I'll be darned.
And,
So you got back to Beaumont eventually, and then
well, I went
then
to
you came
Lamar,
back.
and
You went to Lamar, right?
Yeah, and as soon as I could get into A&M, I came
You
up
came
here.
down here,
Yeah.
and you graduated in '49. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
In '49.
And,
Wow.
And
from
50.
46, yeah, and in 50 I got my master's.
Right. Right.
But I wasn't really a smart student or anything else. I started out in what I thought I was going to do was chemical engineering, and physics and calculus separated me from that pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was an electrical engineer for an oil refinery in Beaumont, so
Which one?
it was called Magnolia in those days. I think it's Exxon Mobil today. I'm not sure who bought it up.
Well, my grandfather was the president of Idaco in Beaumont.
Is that right?
You're a
Yes.
kid. Are you from Beaumont?
No, well, they were.
They
But-
were?
And my mother, they had moved from Ohio. And you remember Idaco?
Yeah.
The oil drilling and equipment
Yeah.
thing. He was president of Idaco in Beaumont.
Well,
They lived there their whole until they
Probably
died.
the same age as Dan.
They're buried there. No, I think they'd be a little bit older now. They'd be close to. No, my grandfather was born in 1890, so he
Oh,
was,
yeah.
yeah. So their last name was Bloss, Bloss.
But
And
anyway,
lived on Harrison Avenue.
It
In
was
Beaumont.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
anyway, and
Excuse me.
I told my dad
Right.
that I'd had to do something about either changing majors or drop out of school, and he
Uh-huh.
said, "Best thing that could ever happen to you." He said, "If you couldn't do the math and the physics, you didn't belong in there anyway."
Uh-huh.
So I come back up here, and I had an old professor named S.W. Bilsing,
Mm-hmm.
and he was had the emeritus head of the Department of Entomology.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking around for a degree that I could take all the chemistry I wanted without having to take so much of that high math.
Right.
And they offered entomology under the School of Agriculture or under the School of Arts and Sciences. And if
Mhm.
you took it under Arts and Sciences, you could have a lot more electives.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I took my degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I did, because it was the event of, I guess DDT was the only organic thing they had during the war, but shortly after the war, most of these agricultural chemical companies were coming with a lot of chlorinated hydrocarbons, different kind.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to work with all that stuff when it was in training.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the master's thesis on cotton bollworm, and it was basically a histological study.
Right.
It's got all the slides, I still have the slides. I don't think you could see anything on them anymore. But, that was how I
what
did it.
pictures do you have there? You got what do you have? Let's see what you got.
Here, I'll introduce you to the.
Uh-huh.
I tell you, where one place we went to the producers co-op
Right.
banquet the other night where Mike
Wait a
Huckabee
minute,
was.
wait a minute.
Right.
Were you there?
No, I wasn't there, but I saw him.
tell you, he was great.
Well, I saw him 2 weeks earlier. He was here 2 weeks earlier
Yeah,
for the Hope Pregnancy Center
Yeah, right.
thing. I was at that. Yeah.
Well, but the joke, did he tell jokes?
Yeah.
At that?
Yeah, yeah.
He one right after another.
Oh, yeah, he
and
talked-
I cannot remember jokes.
Well, most of his jokes were about how when he first started out and how nobody had heard of him and all of that.
but
Those
then
were pretty
he had
funny.
some other ones that were pretty
Yeah,
good.
he talked about
Yeah.
staying in a hotel near Hobby Airport in Houston, and
You can see my kids helped it.
they helped you.
Growing up.
Well, I said he really sounded like
Now
a
there,
Baptist
wait a minute,
preacher
one of that-
after he
that's-
got started.
Well, he's running for president again,
Oh,
I think,
oh,
for
you think?
2012. Oh yeah, yeah. I think.
Well,
I don't think there's any doubt
he
about it.
should- I think he
He's-
should pick,
he's-
what's her name, Sarah Palin
Uh-huh.
as his running mate.
He's making enough speeches that I think he's
He's
already
gotten to be-
he's already started his 2012
Well, you should have passed that
campaign.
picture in there
Oh,
somewhere.
I'm sure it is there, but I'll just use
I
that.
don't remember.
Have you got any other pictures? Have you got this picture here? Is that?
What was
There's
that?
a better one. Dan, get those.
Oh no, wait. That's the one that just came from there.
Dan.
Didn't it? Yeah. That just came from there. I see that because it's kind of grainy.
I think there's.
What else have you got?
This is what I found afterwards.
See what else you got.
Oh, my
Oh no,
That's
wait,
nice.
wait,
Oh,
y'all
like
didn't
that.
go. Show you an
God. No,
old
that's a
song.
baby picture. No,
There's
there's a
my
real.
boot camp picture when I
Yeah,
was.
that's the one. There's the one I was.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah, I do too.
That's a nice picture.
Mhm.
Well, that's
Looks
a good-looking Marine right
He
there.
looks sissy, doesn't he?
No,
And do you
That's
have
tough.
this one?
he looks. Is that
Yeah,
the
I
same
think
as this
it's
one?
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
19 San Diego. Yeah.
229th. Yeah.
And
Where
see,
are
I
you in
don't
this?
know where.
I think I was on the end over here. Here I am, right there.
On the very end?
Yeah.
Front row, right there.
Yeah, and-
Yeah, I see you right there.
And when you marched with a
Mhm.
platoon, why, I
Let me
was on
see
the
what-
short end.
Right.
And the big guys, when they were walking in their direction, you had to run to stay up with them, and if they were
That's
working,
I don't know where that must be from.
I don't know
Beaumont.
where that
Yeah.
came from. When you were going the other direction, why then they were walking on the back of you. Because,
See what
Right.
that other one is, Dan. I don't know it.
I don't know. That's just a
What's that?
picture.
Let me
Huh?
see it.
That's a crappy picture.
Oh,
Of
that's
what?
not crap.
Me, I don't know where that had to be.
Oh, that
That's
must
good
be
hair.
graduation or something.
Not from
Huh?
A&M?
No,
High
no.
school.
This was made in Beaumont.
Oh, well.
Evidently, your mother took you to the same place every time.
I like that. I'll use that. And I'll use.
Wait a minute, what was I going to tell him about Beaumont?
And along with these, I found a picture of him
Oh,
with our first car.
I wish you had a picture of that Model A.
Yeah,
I
that would
wished
have
I
been
had
good.
kept the thing because it didn't have a spot of rust on it. The
Yeah,
old
you
man that
should
had
have.
he had it, I don't know how long, I guess most all during the war it was
Dan
up on
keeps
front.
saying about the wooden spoke wheels we had on it.
Right.
And I can remember, I guess Danny, we hadn't had the first child. Anyway, it was snowing and we were in College Station. My mother lived here.
Uh-huh.
And we didn't have any way to get the snow and ice off the windshield, so I took we had a candle
Yeah.
and I ran that along the windshield.
Wow. Well, if I can, I might borrow this from you and give it back to you tomorrow, if that's
That's fine.
okay.
That's
I'm just going to scan it.
Let me ask you,
Uh-huh.
what are you gonna do? Are you doing a newspaper thing?
No, TV. This is the TV show.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I haven't ever seen one on the TV.
You haven't?
No.
Okay.
What?
Well, but you said you have. You've seen the show.
No,
seen
he
It's on
hasn't.
every weekend. It's on KAMU. It's called Veterans of the Valley. I've been doing it for about 3.5 years now.
You know
Oh, I
who you know
haven't.
who used
Yeah.
to tell me about it is Benny.
Oh, well.
He says
There's
he
no
asked me if I
black
ever watched
friend
it. Yeah,
in
black guy.
Gauze.
Right. It's on every weekend on KAMU. It's on at 8:30 every Friday night, and it repeats Saturday and Sunday at 6:30 on KAMU on the public television station. And what we're going to do tomorrow is it's a 30-minute show. and we're gonna record it. We're gonna tape a show tomorrow, and the show will
We
actually.
won't be on it for 30 minutes.
He and I together will be, yes. Oh, we'll have plenty to talk about with the pictures and all of that. Yeah. Well, you come along with him tomorrow.
Oh,
No, you're not gonna be on. You won't be on
well, no,
TV.
I
No, but
wouldn't
you can
dare.
sit. But you can sit there and watch us tape it.
they did us one time about orchids
Oh, did they?
on KBTX.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
we knew everybody else. Anyway, after
No, but
I
if you
saw
want-
myself, I thought, gosh, why didn't somebody wind me up?
Well, no, if you come with him, you won't be on TV. We'll sit
Oh,
you over.
I wouldn't dare.
No, we'll sit you over to the side. And you can watch us
And
tape the
tell
show.
me on Saturday.
It's on. Matter of fact, you can watch the show this weekend. I forget who I have on this weekend because I tape about 5 or 6 weeks in advance. So the show,
Well,
the show
you're
that he and I
not
will
at the
tape.
TV station, are you?
Do what?
Are you with the TV?
No, I'm at the radio.
That's what I
Right,
thought.
right, I'm on
Why would you
WTW
be
radio.
doing TV?
It's just something extra that I do. Just something I do on the
You
side.
know Todd Carroll?
Yeah, I know Todd. No, I've been doing it for about 3.5 years.
Hmm.
And now this isn't at KBTX. This isn't over on 29th Street. This is KAMU. Do you know where KAMU is? It's on campus. I'll give you directions.
Oh, I know where that is. I used to take, are they the ones that have the auction?
Hmm? Yep,
Oh,
same place.
I took orchids over there for years and years
Yeah,
and years.
we're gonna be in that. We're gonna be in that same room where they do the auction. Right there. That's where we'll tape the show. Right there. Right there. So do you want to come with him so you know where we're going?
Yeah, I'll take him over there.
Okay.
He'll never make it over there.
Okay. Well, it's right there off of. You know where it is?
George Bush.
Right off of George
Yeah.
Bush, Houston Street. It's right there, that
Is it
one-story
that
building.
same little building?
Same
there?
little building.
I think it was sort of a
Yeah, it's
yellow looking.
Yeah, it's a one-story building.
Mhm.
It's right down from. Well, you know where it is. You've been there. Yeah, and you could all just come in the
I
front
don't
door.
know the street name.
It's called Houston Street.
Houston.
Yeah, that's the street that comes off of George Bush.
Wasn't across the way from it. I
Right.
think.
Let me show you where to park.
Well, I always parked in the back.
Well,
They stopped there.
yeah. Well, during the auction you could, but during the daytime you can't. They might give you a ticket. So I'm going to show you where to park here. And let's just say that's.
We do have some notepads. I just
That's
took
okay.
the envelope out.
Okay, here's George Bush, and this is called Houston.
I can't remember the woman's name that was in charge.
Elaine Hoyak. She's there, or Penny Zent.
That's it.
Penny Zent? Uh-huh.
Mhm,
Right. Okay. All right, here you go. Here's George Bush.
Yeah.
And
That's
like
you.
if you're going, this is Welborn and the railroad track right
Yeah.
there. Okay. Yeah, this is George Bush. And that's Houston Street.
Mhm.
You know, the former students building is right here. You know, the big former students building
Yeah,
that they're
yeah.
doing reconstruction on right now.
Okay.
And you
What's
just-
his name?
What's
The
what?
name of that?
The something.
It's got a name.
Yeah, it's got a name.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
it's
know
former
where we
students.
are.
Anyway, there's George Bush, and or if you're coming from Welborn, I don't know
No,
which
I'll
way you might be
find
coming
out.
from this direction.
No,
Will you come up Texas?
probably.
Okay. Well, you come up Texas, and then George
I know
Bush.
Where it is, yeah.
And you just go right past, there's KAMU right there on your left. And if you go right into the parking lot, right after you pass the building, and then just turn right and do a U-turn and park right there facing the street. There's about 4 or 5 parking places that there's a sign on each one that says authorized vehicles only.
Okay.
You can park
I
there.
can park there.
You can park where it says there. It's just right there. Just do a U-turn to the right and park right there facing the street
Okay,
again.
when I used to come in to take the plants,
You
I'd
used to
come
park
there
back there,
and I'd
yeah.
park and there was a big tree right.
Right. I ran into that tree. Yeah. There's still, but don't park there in the daytime because they might give you a
But,
ticket.
okay,
But
all right.
these 4 places that
Okay.
say authorized vehicles only,
Okay.
there'll be 1 or 2 that are open and parked there because that's
Okay.
that's
all
for
right.
guests of
Yeah,
KAMU.
well, can I still come in the back door there?
Well, if you're going to park there, it's best just to walk down the sidewalk and come in the
Come
front
in the
door.
front?
Yeah.
Okay, I've never come in the front.
Well, yeah, just come in the front because you're going to park right there. Just walk down the
Okay,
sidewalk.
okay.
And if y'all can be there tomorrow around 2:15, all right there.
Yeah.
Because we start taping at 2:30,
Okay.
and we'll have a chair for you just to sit there and you can
Oh,
watch
don't worry
you can watch
about
us
me.
tape, and it's just
I'd
a
rather
30-minute
not.
show that we'll just, what you and I'll do, we'll just talk kind of like we're just talking right now. Well, you've seen the show before. You
Yeah,
sort of know
I'm
what
pretty sure.
what it is. And
But he doesn't have to dress, does he?
he just whatever he wants to wear. Whatever he wants to wear. I wear a tie, but that's just me. Most of the veterans don't. Most of them, whatever you want to wear, whatever you want to dress up in.
Not
just
sure I even have a tie.
well, no, that's fine. I don't want you to wear a tie. Just a collared shirt, whatever you
Yeah.
want to wear, that would be just
I
great.
think you had to go to a funeral not too long ago.
Yeah, I have to have
And I'm going to take very good care of this and give it
Okay.
back to you tomorrow because I just
Okay.
need to scan it. I'm
Okay,
gonna
wait
take
a
it-
minute. You told me that. Well,
Well, when it's
on
on,
Saturday, yeah.
okay, it's on. First of all, it's on 3 times every weekend. The same show is 3 times every weekend.
Okay.
It's on Fridays at 8:30, and it's on Saturday at
Is
6.
that at night?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Saturday at 6:30, and Sunday at 6:30. Same show repeats. It plays that time first, and then it repeats every Saturday and
Okay.
Sunday each weekend.
Okay.
And his show will be on. It won't be on this weekend. It'll be
Yeah.
4 or 5 weeks before it's on, because I run about that far ahead of time.
Well, boy,
But you can
yeah.
sort of see the. If y'all want to watch this weekend,
Yeah,
I don't know who I have, but you can get an idea of what it is.
Okay.
And it's on
Yeah.
KA. Are y'all on cable?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's Channel
Channel
4.
4.
Channel
Yeah,
4.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, Channel 4. That's what it
Because
is.
I always watch the auction.
Oh yeah. Well, now
Anyway, he does a lot of wood. I don't even know if I have any of his
Yeah.
stuff anymore. But really neat looking wood
Yeah.
pieces.
Well, that's
And
something I
he's
forgot to ask you all. Thank you for bringing it up. Was about your family. How many kids do y'all have?
Well, we have.
We had 3 boys and 3 girls.
We only have 4 living.
Okay. So.
And the Brazos Valley Rehab Center, Dan and I started that.
Oh, okay.
Because of Dougie, we had
I'm
a
the only
son who was
lifetime member still
handicapped.
living.
Uh huh. I see.
So J.O. Alexander and his wife and Dan and I
Right.
worked on it till we got it going.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So,
Wonderful. That's a great facility. I just did one of those Bravo Brazos Valleys. As a matter of fact, I just did on the rehab center. As a matter of fact.
Well, shoot,
Yeah,
you should have
yeah.
found out that then.
Yeah. I just did that not too long ago. And so grandkids.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't even know. 7, I think.
7?
And 2 great-grandchildren.
Right. So living, you have what? 2
We have
3?
4 children. We
Okay.
have 3 daughters and a son.
and a son.
And Danny's the artist in
He's the one in San Antonio. Where are the daughters?
Here.
They're all here.
Got 3 of them here in college
Yeah.
area.
What do they do?
Well,
one's
one's
at
married
the
to
vet
Bart
school.
Humphreys. You know who Bart Humphreys?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay,
Well, that's
his
our
wife
son-in-law.
Oh, Bart's your son-in-law.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I know Bart very well. Yeah,
Do
with the
you
fire
really?
department, sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, yeah,
do you
sure.
know Fred Rapsick?
Don't know if I know Fred. No.
That's another son-in-law.
Another son-in-law? No.
Who's 30 years with the fire department at College Station.
Oh, okay. Don't know if I met Fred, but I certainly know Bart.
Well, you'd
'cause-
remember Fred if you
okay.
got
Well,
him.
of course, Bart's the spokesperson for the fire department.
He
Yeah.
is. He really is.
Yeah.
And he's...
Well, I first met Bart. I first met Bart when I was covering the bonfire. Yeah, the bonfire
Okay,
tragedy.
'cause
That's
he
when I
was
first
the
met
big
Bart. Yeah, right,
bonfire thing.
right.
But let me tell you real quick
Uh-huh.
about Bart.
Yeah,
Let me get a sip.
he's a good man. I like Bart. does a good
He's
job.
perfect for that job.
Yeah. He does a good job.
Our youngest daughter is an epileptic,
Uh-huh.
and her first child
Uh-huh.
ended up having convulsions
I see.
after about 6 months.
Mhm.
Excuse me. I think I swallowed wrong. Anyway, when she was about 3.5, Dr. Matthews here took care of her,
Mhm.
and she was. They took her to the hospital, and she had a seizure that lasted 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And we didn't know that this had happened.
Mhm.
They life flighted her to Texas Children's, and we were down there for about 7 or 8 weeks.
Mm.
And when we came home, she's just nothing. She's bedridden. She can't hardly move. And she's fed through a tube in her stomach.
This is your granddaughter?
This is my granddaughter. Well,
Right.
before all this happened, Ann is not the best
Mm-hmm.
person, and she just couldn't care for this child. So Ava and Bart took her,
Is that right?
and they have her now. She's now 13.
Is she?
Can't do
She
anything.
can't do, but
Is
she
that right?
can love, and
Oh,
she
bless
can,
her heart.
She,
And bless them, my goodness.
Yes, well, I think everybody ought to know
Wow.
about
Wow,
how
what
Bart and Ava have, taken this child.
their niece.
She feeds
Yes.
and medicates every 4 hours.
Yeah, well, that's
around the
sort of
clock.
beat up. But that's a picture of her. Her
Uh-huh.
hair's not, I've cut her
Oh, my
hair
goodness.
since then. She's a beautiful little girl. But they have to feed her every 4 hours through this tube.
Yeah,
And Ava sleeps in the room with her. That's my daughter, Bart's
right.
wife.
Right.
And, she has to get up every 4 hours.
What's her name?
Emily,
Emily?
only I call her Em, or
We happen to have an orchid named Emily.
I see.
Emily Ruth,
That
yeah.
somebody else
Um,
cloned it.
But you might tell Bart if you ever see him something.
Well, I see him every once in a while because
Yeah.
he'll come by the radio station to
But
talk about the fire
he's
department or
so good.
something.
He comes home for lunch,
Yeah.
and every day he comes in first to see Emmy and give her a kiss before he does anything else.
Wow. Wow.
She's just
Well,
precious. And you
I've always
just-
liked Bart, but I like him even better now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
And-
it's been hard on them,
Right.
believe me, and especially my daughter.
Right. And you have a third daughter that's here?
Hmm. And Amy's at the vet school.
Okay.
She's
Yeah.
been there about 25 years, I
Okay.
guess.
Is she married?
To Fred Rapsick, who's
Oh,
the
Fred
other-
Rapsick.
who's the other fireman.
Okay. Well, then there's another daughter. Have you talked about the other daughter?
Ann, who is her.
Oh, okay. Who is her mother?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And she's here also? Okay. All right.
But she's
Yeah. Yeah, there's always a. Yeah.
always one.
Yeah. I understand.
I don't know.
I understand.
I was an only